Good afternoon and welcome to the Waverley Local Planning Panel meeting of the 26th of May 2021. I'm the chair of the panel and my name is Annalise Tour. Joining me today via video conference are Jan Morell and Graham Brown. Unfortunately, Graham Brown is delayed, but will be with us soon. And both these are expert members of the panel, and the community representative is Penelope Morrow. The panel has individually taken inspections for items on the agenda from the street and surrounding area and or electronically. We have been provided with an assessment report. Provided with an assessment report prepared by council staff who have also briefed the panel on each application. Today we have a number of speakers registered to address the panel. The orders of speakers for each item will be firstly objectors and then those supporting the application, including the applicant or their representative. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes and any extension of time will be at my discretion as chair. The panel has been provided with copies of all submissions received in response to the public exhibition of the application and forwarded a copy of late correspondence. Therefore, there is no need for speakers to repeat all the points made in those submissions or by previous speakers. Please focus on the key points you wish us to understand and consider. The applicant may wish to address issues raised in council's report, including the response to conditions or any reasons for refusal and issues raised by an objector. We may ask questions of the speakers to clarify our understanding of what is being said. We expect that each speaker will be heard in silence while they are addressing the panel and that courtesy and respect will be observed throughout this teleconference. I ask that everyone mutes their microphones unless they are called on to speak, noting that we have the ability to mute individuals. After hearing from speakers on all items, the public meeting will be closed and the panel will then deliberate and make our decisions. The minutes of the panel's decision, including our reasons, will be available on council's website as soon as possible. And you should be aware that the panel meetings are recorded and the audio recordings will also be uploaded to council's website. Each member of the panel has been asked prior to the meeting to advise whether they have a conflict of interest to declare in relation to any item on the agenda, and I can advise that no conflicts of interest have been declared. However, for item 2, the review application for 9 to 11 Andrews Avenue, Bondi, I was on the panel that refused the application and I can therefore not determine this review application. I will not participate in that item and Jan Morell will chair the meeting for this item. That item may also need to be moved later in the agenda because we'll need to wait for Graham Brown to be in attendance so that we have a quorum. So the first item on the agenda is item 1, 5 Delview Street, Tamarama. And we have one objector registered to speak. That's Russell Brennan.
Madam Chair, panel members and senior council staff, thank you for the opportunity to address you. I'm Russell Brennan, owner of number 3 Delview Street to the north of the site. I'm here to speak in opposition to the DA and in support of the recommendation by council staff to refuse the DA. Unfortunately, my planner was unable to make this meeting due to other commitments. However, he has written a late summary submission to the panel on our behalf, which hopefully you have received and read. Both Deborah, my wife, and I are opposed to several aspects of the proposal. Our planner, Jason Perica, also opposes the DA. Our planner's original submission, as well as the addendum mailed yesterday, contains about a dozen reasons why the proposal should be refused. We are glad that the independent council staff have come to the same conclusion, that the proposal should be refused. We thank and appreciate the diligent work by council staff, including in checking details of the proposal, which were not accurately accounted for. In summary, we have the following key concerns. Firstly, inappropriate site planning and rear setback. The proposal is not suited to the site. It pushes the bulk to the rear where it is inconsistent with the rear building line and maximises adverse impacts on our amenity. It's not a skillful design. To the contrary, by exceeding the FSR and including numerous balconies which add yet further bulk that aren't included in the FSR, this magnifies rather than skillfully reduces impacts on our views. Secondly, excessive FSR. The proposal exceeds the FSR by 11%, and that excludes a very questionable area of stormwater storage, dubiously excluded as plant, yet labelling it as a family room in previous plans approved by council and retaining all the characteristics of usable floor space. The FSR is considerable and directly results in adverse amenity impacts, including on views. The bulk and scale is further exacerbated by central excessive balconies, which provide the only passage to the new studio. These add bulk and are not included in the FSR. Crucially, the proposal neither meets the objectives of the FSR standard nor provides sufficient environmental planning reasons to support the significant variation proposed. Thirdly, view impacts. The view impacts are unquestionably adverse. They also arise directly from the non-compliant FSR and wall height and poor site planning and design. We agree with council staff that the applicant's view assessment cannot be relied upon. In this regard, we have taken our own view assessment as presented in our most recent submission. This shows the proposal has greater view impacts than put forward. There are many other vantage points within our home and balconies where views are impacted negatively. The proposal does not present reasonable view sharing, and the following summary on page 24 of the staff report best summarises the proposal and its impact. Rather than a reasonable sharing of views, the proposal seeks to maximise views at the expense of the neighbouring property, while contravening key development standards and DCP controls. Thank you for your time. I hope the panel agrees with us and council staff, and the application should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just check if there's any questions. Any questions from panel members? No? Okay, thank you. The next speaker is on behalf of the applicant, Anne Davis.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to present to the WLPP today. I will address three issues. The proposed addition will support the needs of our family is the first and most important. Second, the FSR, and third, the view analysis. Issue 1. Some years ago, our daughter suffered an aggravated violent event. Yesterday, she was again admitted to a health facility in connection with her conditions. She needs long-term therapy and care. This DA journey, and in particular the design of a separate retreat, was triggered by her conditions, and we propose to create a sunny and positive retreat space to assist her recovery over the long term. Issue 2, FSR. Our designer and GSA planning prepared and we submitted a DA with a compliant FSR of 0.844. The maximum allowable is just over that at 8.48. Council rejects our consultant's analysis and required us to submit a section 4.6 variation to FSR. We did this, and council's assessment is that part of our garage is over FSR by 11%. The garage area in question is below street level, enclosed by rock walls on two sides, north and west, is dark, mouldy and damp from seepage from a north-south stormwater drain crossing Delview Lane and abutting our western boundary, and from the natural gully more generally. We submitted a section 4.6 variation to FSR, pointing out that it is in the alternative to our consultant's assessment of compliance with FSR. In any event, as our consultants explain in our DA submissions, this section 4.6 variation that is sought is not unreasonable. Due to time, we will rely on our DA submissions and move to issue 3, view analysis, which is the purported impact which we resist. Our proposal is modest at 6.39 metres in height, much lower than the number 3 Delview. And it sits 0.84 metres lower than our existing first level at the front. Our proposal's rear building line aligns with 3 Delview Street, which is different to what they are saying, but it is objectively aligned. We've done that on purpose. We moved it back 2 metres. The difference with our proposal is it sits 3.86 metres below 3 Delview Street's roof, i.e. a whole story. 3 Delview Street will look over and around our proposed addition. The RLs are set out and in the table. 3 Delview will retain its horizon and foreshore views. 9 Delview Street, 2 doors down from us to the south, their recent addition already sits within 3 Delview's mid-ground, and this is shown in the extracted figure 4. The assessment report appears to hold on to opinions based on our original larger, higher 2019 DA that was withdrawn, which had a rear setback extending 2 metres beyond 3 Delview Street's rear building line. This is shown in figure 6 below. Our proposal will not impact properties on Fletcher Street to the north, as 3 Delview Street's rear balcony with metal pergola already does this. It exceeds the predominant rear building line. Our proposal will not impact 3 Delview Street's view. In conclusion, we respectfully request that the WLPP approves our DA 424/2020 and considers this seriously for all the reasons given. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that one? No? All right, so we'll move on from that item. As I said, we'll have to defer our consideration of item 2 until Graham Brown arrives, which I understand he hasn't arrived yet. So we'll move on to item 3, which is for 669 Old South Head Road, Vaucluse. We have no objectors registered to speak for that item. And on behalf of the applicant, we have Jeff Shaw and Jeremy Bryden.
That's better. Madam Chair and panel members, it's Jeremy Bryden, applicant for the project. I don't have a lot to say other than I agree with the council's assessment. We spent a lot of time with council, working closely with them to derive a design that appeased themselves and ourselves. So we're quite happy with the outcome, and hope you are as well. Thank you very much.
All right, so is Jeff Shaw also speaking, or just available for questions?
I think he's unable to attend. He might be turning up later, so apologies.
That's all right. So I'll just check if there's any questions from panel members of Mr. Bryden. Anyone have any questions? No? All right. I have just a couple of questions. Just in relation to the setback of the proposal from its boundary to the north, I think it is, that it's 1.5. Can you just explain, and it seems to rely on the proposal, the adjoining approval, which hasn't been constructed yet. So can you just explain a little bit about the logic behind that?
Yes, there's a 6.2 metre separation between the proposed development next door and ours. Both developments have windows that don't face each other, so the privacy and amenity impacts have been addressed in that regard. The height of our building sits at about just under 12.5 metres in compliance with the DCP of council, which sort of articulates or outlines that up to 12.5 metres, a 1.5 metre setback is acceptable, or outlined in the page 187 of the DCP. The site, as you can tell, is 13 metres wide. Any further setback, I suppose 6 metres from the boundary, as outlined in the ADG, although the ADG image is probably for a 5-storey, would have a big impact on that corner site, which is in the in the town centre. So we spent a lot of time with council working on this. The ground floor level is set back quite a distance from the neighbouring building. And as I said to begin with, the privacy, amenity, solar, all those aspects have been addressed and in compliance with those relevant controls.
All right. So what's the setback of the ground floor? So it's
The ground floor would be overall about 10 metres with landscaping and car park ramp.
so that's 10 metres from the rear of the.
Oh, sorry, from the building line, from the back of the retail shop and
Yeah.
walkway to the neighbouring property.
And then to the side, it's got the ramp in there, has it? And that would be, it's not dimensioned, but what, 4 metres or something, or 3 metres?
Yeah, that's right, of that order.
Oh, it actually is dimensioned. So it's about 3.5 metres. Okay. All right, and just one other thing. I think in the report it was mentioned that the urban designer talked about, chamfering the corner to sort of better reflect or better relate to the corner location. Was that something that you considered as well, or rejected, or just?
It was considered.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it was considered by the architect, and the form above the building, keeping above and below the building consistent, was seen as a better architectural outcome. Whether it is chamfered or not, obviously won't make a big difference, but it was viewed as a much better architectural outcome. That's and from the bifolding doors and whatnot, it did seem to be a better outcome.
Okay, then my questions. So no further questions from anyone else? No. All right, so that's the speakers for item 3. The next matter we'll deal with is item 4, which is for 150 to 152 Glenner Avenue, Bondi Beach. And we have an objector speaking, Nicolette Boaz. Nicolette, are you there?
Nicolette's not in the meeting.
Okay, all right, well, we'll move on. So we have a representative of the applicant, Yvette Middleton, and as well as Simon Hanson, the architect. So are they there?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair, panel and council staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And it looks like I'm in darkness, so I think I'll turn off my video. First of all, I wanted to say with regard to our design, which was one of the first reasons for refusal, which we're very disappointed about, we do have good design, good amenity, and we are capable of achieving design excellence, which we've outlined in the late submission we made to you, which I hope you've had the opportunity to review. That was based on the DAP recommendations, which concluded that it was capable of achieving design excellence with a few minor tweaks. The second aspect I would like to talk about is the rear setback. We're facing a side setback, which is an unusual situation, and it's a 4-storey block of units with garaging at ground floor. As an infill site, we are looking towards the back end of the building. The neighbour's opposite side faces views, so we're looking essentially at the rear of all these units. with the lower level being garaging and our lower level being garaging, there is a similarity there. Our drawings DA501 and DA502 demonstrate that despite it being slightly less than the 6 metres required, we are providing excellent levels of privacy and amenity for both the residents of the property next door and our site, because we have planters and we have screening. Interestingly, the DAP said that perhaps the screening didn't need to be fixed, but DA501 shows how the screening does actually provide complete privacy by directing views away from windows. DA502 is useful because it shows what it could look like with all the landscaping. And in the material that we provided in our late correspondence, we have included potential conditions of consent that address the DAP concerns regarding maintenance of landscaping and things like that. The third point is solar access. Now, again, as an infill building in a commercial area, we are comparable in shape and form to the buildings on either side. So it's not unreasonable to anticipate that we will overshadow to some degree a building to our rear. However, when you compare the buildings on either side, you will see that our shadows are not particularly different to theirs. We also have absolutely no effect between 9:30 and 11:30, partial effect between 12 and 1, and all the buildings affect the neighbouring property between 2 and 3. So another point raised in the reasons for refusal was the building height. This is a function of the floor to ceiling heights required for the retail space and for the ADG compliance. We could possibly look at, well, it could be a condition of consent to reduce the height of or the pitch of the upper level roof and the roof over the rear veranda. That would reduce the building height. But as you can see, we are already providing similar shadows to the neighbouring buildings. So in summary, I'd like to say it relates very well, noting that to the neighbouring buildings, noting that 144 to 146 Glenare is oriented towards Roscoe Street. So it has a slightly different form and a different orientation. Our layout is very much the same as number 154. And so therefore we can say with quite quiet confidence that we are quite consistent in the streetscape. We would ask that you consider deferred commencement conditions. We've tried to demonstrate how these conditions could be incorporated that would address the concerns raised in the Planning Officer's report, and we look forward to your decision. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Ms.
I think
Middleton? No?
I have one. One thing that that you didn't canvass in what you just discussed was the council officer's recommendation about the car parking for the building. Could you just explain why you are reluctant to make the changes that they have recommended in terms of putting it below ground level?
I might actually hand over to our architect, Harry Henshaw to speak on that. But I would point out that we are compliant in that the car parking controls in the DCP are to a maximum. So I'll pass it over to Harry, and I've just got to mute myself because we're in the same room.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so it's a bit of, is there a reverberation on your end?
There is, yes.
Yes,
Can you turn yours
I just
on?
have to.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So I guess in terms of the car parking, we do ramp down as much as we can to the basement. So the car parking is underground, it's under the mezzanine level, except that we have car stackers, which are above the ground level at the rear. This is the buildings on both the buildings adjacent also have at-grade parking, and the building to the southeast, 45 Roscoe, that's facing a driveway and at-grade garaging. So I think in this context, we think it's an appropriate response to provide the car parking how we've done with the extensive planting on top of the car parking. So if you refer to, I guess, DA 502, that shows how that rear ties into the neighbouring context. Am I able to share screen? Is that something?
No.
Apparently we can't do that in this panel. So no, but we can just look at the drawings if you tell us what number you want us to do.
DA 502.
Yep. Yes.
So I guess that shows, sorry, I'm just getting it up on this end. That shows what the rear parking looks like at the rear. And you could see that the brick wall that we've proposed, which houses the car stackers, marries the height of number 146 and then steps down to marry the height of 154 Glenayre Avenue. And I guess where you're looking at that rear wall is facing the driveway and at-grade parking of number 45 to 47 Roscoe. So I think in this site, we think this is the right thing to do at the rear here. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'll just see if there's any other questions. Any other questions?
No.
No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just check before we move on whether Nicolette Boas has joined the meeting. Do we know yet if she's here? No?
He hasn't
All right.
joined the meeting.
She hasn't joined?
No.
Okay, thank you. So Graham Brown has joined the meeting for that item. So we'll now move on back to item 2. And as I said in my opening, I will excuse myself from this item and Jan Morell will chair the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So item 2, I'll just go back to and I'll look at who we have registered to speak. We have David McNutt. Are you there online?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Mr. Nutt. Would you please address the panel?
Thanks very much. I wanted to begin by saying I live at 27 Dudley Street, and along with my neighbours, we made a joint submission about this development, objecting to it. And we lodged this through the planning advisory firm Mod Urban. I want to begin by acknowledging that this DA is better than the previous one, but really that only demonstrates how incompetent and bad the previous one was. The previous one, as you know, was rejected by the panel.
Yes.
But I'm disappointed with the recommendation for approval by the DBU. The bulk and the height of the proposed development continues to have an impact on our 3 homes. And while there have been changes to the previous proposal, there will still be an overwhelming sense of enclosure and loss of privacy. It didn't really come out in the report, but running along the back of our garden is a small cliff line or embankment, which exaggerates the different levels of the properties that I represent, and also the adjoining property for which the DA is submitted. The proposed new building will sit on top of this little cliff line and therefore loom over the rear gardens of all 3 of our homes. As well, there'll be a loss of privacy, especially for the rear-facing internal rooms of 29 Dudley Street. And this will permanently damage our amenity. The report recommends planter boxes as a way of overcoming a loss of visual privacy, but this is inadequate in my view. And secondly, and I speak as someone who does the bulk of the washing and drying of our clothes in our home, we already have limited access to the sun, and this new development will reduce that further. And this is, in my view, unreasonable. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKnight. Is there any questions from Mr. Brown or Ms. Mora.
Yes, Mr. McKnight, just what areas of the building or the proposed building do you see the privacy issues coming from?
From the balconies and from the windows of the development.
Okay, now I'm just looking at the upper level. It has 2 bedrooms and a terrace, and yes, 2 bedrooms and a balcony. The bedrooms have no windows facing your property. That would overcome your concerns, presumably, from the bedrooms.
Well, I've not been in my neighbour's property, so it's hard to give an all-encompassing answer.
You have seen the plans, of course.
Yes, I have. Well,
Okay.
most of it I've left in the hands of the detail. I've left in the hands of
Right.
our
Okay.
advisor.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions? Very well. Thank you very much, Mr. McKnight. You may stay online and we'll hear from the applicant's town planner, Mr. Cosnetta, if you could please address the panel. And in addressing the panel, could I ask you to address the points that have been raised by Mr. McKnight? Mr. Cosnetta, are you there?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes,
yep.
Yes, I am. Firstly, thank you to Katie Johnston and Ben Magistrali for a thorough and detailed report, and importantly, getting the matter to today's panel. Today is literally the last day available to us under the review provisions. Well, we believe we've come a long way since the first application the panel refused a year ago. In that original proposal, it relied on controls relevant to a residential flat building rather than a dual occupancy. And the panel rightly rejected the flawed reliance on those controls. Although a dual occupancy, the building had a scale and impact of a block of flats. The amended plans lodged as part of this review made substantial changes to the development and addressed all former reasons for refusal. The scale and impact of the building is now rightly that of a dwelling house, as is required by the controls, not a block of flats.
Unfortunately,
following further feedback from Katie.
No, sorry, we missed what you said. So if you could just go back, you mentioned scale and height of a dwelling, and then from there on we missed the audio.
Not a problem. I was saying that the scale and impact of this building is now that of a dwelling house rather than a residential flat building as required by the controls. Following feedback from Katie Johnston during the review period, we made even further changes to the scale of the building and to address the neighbours' concerns. In fact, our response over-delivered on Council's requests, offering greater side setbacks and rear setbacks, just to ensure the new building delivered on all of the LEP and DCP objectives. To that degree, we say we've addressed all of the Council's issues and all of the matters in the submissions and all former reasons for refusal.
Continue.
Sorry. The new building is only 1 metre higher than the existing building. It presents as a 2-storey building with a 3rd level roof, where there are an allowance for 4 storeys on the site. The side setbacks are significantly greater than the controls would require. They are between 1.5 and 3.7 metres from the Douglas Street property.
We've lost you again, I'm sorry.
I might turn off my video and see if that helps.
Thank you.
The building is smaller than the controls anticipate by more than a storey, and the application relies on a variation under clause 4.6. We acknowledge that the variation is supported by staff and our written request meets all statutory requirements and relevant case law. Our proposed FSR is 25% less than a compliant medium density development, but more importantly, it is lower than all neighbouring low density development FSRs as well. By either measure, this building will end up being the smallest and will have the least FSR when all surrounding properties develop to their reasonable potential, regardless of them being low or medium density building forms. The council's report is detailed and considers all the submissions in my view. It confirms overwhelming compliance with the controls. We accept all of the conditions referred to in the report. That concluded the points I wanted to make in response to the Dudley Street concerns. This site is subject to an overall height control of 12.5 metres if you were to do a medium density development. We sit more than a floor below that height, and we are of course low density. We are compliant with the lowest form of wall height if it applied to the site. It doesn't because of the height limit in the LEP, but we have elected to comply with that to provide a reasonable correlation to what would otherwise have been expected on a lower zoned property. The side setbacks are generous. The ground floor, I don't believe, will be seen by the Dudley Street properties. At the first floor, they range between 1.5 and 2.38 metres. And at the second floor, from 2.7 to 3.7 metres. There are limited window openings at those two levels, none at the top floor and only 2 in the middle level. The rear deck at the uppermost level is of a bedroom. It's a low order, low use space. It complies with the maximum area and depth controls in the DCP and provides an excellent outlook for that bedroom. With the planters and the setback 3.7 metres, we don't anticipate that to have unreasonable overlooking into the adjoining properties, which is some distance away. So we believe we've dealt with the privacy and bulk issues through compliance with those controls.
So what you're speaking about there is, I suppose, in respect of number 29, because that was a concern about loss of privacy from the previous speaker, and you're providing a planter box there. And what did you say the separation distance was?
For that balcony, it's 3.7 metres.
Right, thank you. Okay, and would you like to respond to the issues that were raised about limited access to sun, etc., from the dwellings in Andrews Avenue?
Yes, so our shadow analysis demonstrates that the impact starts to occur from 12 noon. Before that, there is no impact on those properties. They continue to receive more than DCP compliant levels of solar access, which is that they are required to receive 3 hours of sunlight, which they do. The impact that we have is far less significant than what could otherwise be provided for with a compliant development. So on balance, we believe that the impact that we will have is reasonable and less than it could have been.
Unfortunately, you've dropped out again.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Did you miss all of that?
No, we got most of it. It was just the last sentence.
Yep. It was most likely a summary of what I've already said.
Right.
If there's any concerns, let me know.
Okay then. Very well. Thank you very much. I'll just ask whether the other panel members have any questions.
None from me.
None from you, Graham. Thank you.
No.
No, none from me.
Right. Thank you very much. The panel will be making a determination in its session later, and the decision will be on the council's website within the next few days. So thank you both for your help and participation in this matter. So we'll now move on to the next item, and I'll ask the chair if we could please ensure that the chair is back for this one. Thank you. Thank you. Good.
Yes, I'm back. So the next item is item 5, 2914 Edward Street, Bondi. And we have no objectors registered to speak. And we have Alex Smith, the architect, on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are here just to say that we are happy with the conditions of recommendation for approval, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have.
All right, I'll just see if any of the panel members have any questions. Any questions?
No, thank you.
No?
No.
All right, so you're off the hook. The next item is item 6, which is uh, 286 to 294A Campbell Parade, North Bondi. And we have registered as objectors Brett Daintree on behalf of Kite Proprietary Limited. Mr. Daintree, are you there?
He's
I'm
on
here.
the-
I'm just struggling to get the video up.
Okay.
Doesn't want to cooperate with me. I'm going to proceed without the video, I'm afraid, because every time I roll over the click on the video, it won't start. Here we go. Can you?
We can see you, but not.
Excellent. Okay, sorry, panel, about that technology.
Okay.
Now, I did lodge, for the purposes of my verbal presentation, a document as an aide-memoire. Did the panel get that?
I'm just, yes, yeah, we did, yeah.
Okay. My biggest concerns are, we agree with the staff report in terms of the hours of use issue and limiting the start time to 7 a.m. consistent with everybody else in the locality. But the main issue is, from the noise side of it, is that condition 8 in particular seeks to require a noise assessment after the consent is issued. In a normal sense, what should normally occur is that the noise from patrons, music, exhaust and waste management, they should be considered up front and not deferred to such a condition. And I'd like to take you now, in a practical sense, to some of the critical noise issues that will arise, in my opinion, by taking you to page 329 of the agenda.
Yes.
And that is the kitchen details under bench plan.
Yes.
It's a fairly large kitchen with limited waste storage. And now I take you to plan at page 335, which shows the waste storage bins located in the driveway area of the premises. So from that noise perspective, although the plan of management purports that waste will only be collected between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. in the morning, in a practical sense, the noise will be perpetrated by people going to and from the storage bins during evening services in particular. That these waste management details have not been set out properly in the plan of management that's lodged. If you go to the plan of management lodged with the application, there's one paragraph assigned to how waste will be managed. And I just don't believe that that's been adequately addressed. So first of all, deferring noise for a later consideration is not appropriate. I'd like to take you to the report also now in respect to upgrading of the premises. And the best photos are at page 302 and 301. As the panel are aware, clauses 93 and 94 of the EPNA regulation require the council in its consideration of a DA to consider what relevant upgrading works would be required to a premises. As you see from the figure 1, the subject site on page 301, there is no disabled access provided to this premises. It doesn't comply with the disability access to premises building standards, and the applicant has not made out any case for demonstrated unjustifiable hardship through this process. The toilets provided at the rear, which are not accessible either. In relation to fire safety, the report does not adequately address, in my opinion, clauses 93 and 94. In particular, I take you to figure 2. This shop is below a sole occupancy unit above it, and that unit can be seen in figure 1 externally. The panel will note there's extensive timber ceilings installed during the last renovation. This work occurred without any oversight from a construction certificate or by a PCA. So there is no guarantee that those ceilings provide proper fire separation, nor for that matter meet the relevant noise ratings or RW ratings under the NCC and BCA. So again, I say that these matters are not matters that ought to be deferred. They should be assessed under this application, and fire upgrading, noise upgrading, and access to premises upgrading should all be done within this process. Finally, I wish to touch on, and I'll skip over what I've written regarding other matters, but they all sort of tie back to noise and waste management and planning management. The final thing I want to touch on is the fact that this work occurred without consent, and the fire safety upgrading has not been detailed in this proposal. Disabled access upgrading has not been detailed by this proposal. The food premises standard upgrading and council's policy for fit out and construction of food premises, including waste storage, have not been detailed by this proposal in sufficient details. And nor have any upgrading works required by Sydney Water been detailed by this proposal in relation to the size of the grease traps. So I would ask the panel to refuse the application and ask that the applicant lodge with the council sufficient information to bring certainty to those issues. One more thing. The building information certificate application was lodged as well with this application, but there's been no nexus joined between this DA assessment and the BIC. And during the assessment of the report, this report simply refers to the BIC, but does not advise the panel how the BIC proposes to deal with the unauthorised works. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel members?
Mr. Daintree, conditions 4 and 5 deal with fire safety. That's not adequate in your view?
No, the clauses 93 and 94 require the consent authority to have a decent look at what has been constructed and what works it is going to order to be done or condition to be done under the consent. I don't think it's a matter that can be deferred, and especially in the circumstances where you're leaving the BIC unresolved as well at the same time. In proceedings I've dealt with in the court, the normal process is, as you're well aware, that you can't grant a consent that remedies unauthorised building work. So this consent that you're being asked to issue relates only to the use. And then that leaves the BIC unresolved. But in the normal circumstances, you would put conditions on this consent that would require certain things to happen before the BIC is issued. The other issue is that if substantive works are required, and I just look at this timber ceiling in figure 2, and I think substantial fire safety works or fire separation works are required, then that would trigger a CC. And that would be a requirement of this consent as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the next speaker we have is on behalf of the applicant, Barry Babikin. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right.
Pretty close.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the panel. Thanks for having me today. I've also prepared just some additional information that I hope has come through to the panel. Can you just confirm that that has been received and reviewed?
There has been some additional information received, yes.
Excellent.
Do you want to just specify exactly what it is so that we can be sure that
I was clarifying conditions 26 in regards to the takeaway service, and conditions 4 and 5, which are in regards to fire safety.
Yes, that's been received.
Brett just covered as well. I won't cover those items just yet. I'll just address those concerns which were raised just now. It's correct in that the DA that we have lodged is not for any fit-out works. Those fit-out works are subject to a building information certificate. Those works have had oversight and instructions from Council's building inspector, being Tony Quill, and those recommendations have been adopted and incorporated within the works that we see out on site, as well as documented in the building information certificate, which is sitting with that office. Unfortunately, this DA seems to have potentially just missed the detail that does come up in that building information certificate. To clarify, this DA, we're seeking three elements, or the scope covers 3 elements. One is to allow for cooking in shop 2. Second is extended hours, and the third is increased seating capacity. The extended hours have been assessed during this application. There's a recommendation. Within that, we have no objection to that. Seating capacity has also been assessed and conditioned. We have no issue with that. And cooking in shop 2 has been assessed and conditioned, and we have no issue with that. The concerns which were raised, I believe, actually fall outside the scope of this DA and are referencing the building information certificate, which has gone through due course. As I understand it, the building information certificate has not yet been released, as that's subject to this DA being approved, and the only purpose of that is to allow for cooking too. As there was a previous DA, a historic DA, which had a condition in place which only allowed for shopping within shop 1. So the building, cooking in shop 1. So the building information certificate has informed all of the fire safety upgrades, has informed all of the food code compliance matters. There is nothing outstanding there. So I just would like to clarify that, and I hope that the concerns that were raised don't confuse the matter of the DA at hand at this point. In terms of the waste management, the previous premises was a cafe of equal size, equal business, etc. Those waste management procedures were in place at that point. The toilets that are available on site remain unchanged and are outside of the leasehold of this fit out. So again, are outside the subject of this DA. And access to premises standard was reviewed, and given that we are in a heritage conservation area and this is a historic building that obviously does not allow for wheelchair access into the premises, that was maintained. Nothing was changed in that respect. That's all I'll say there, unless I've got any questions, and I'll move on to conditions 26, conditions 4 and 5. Condition 26 refers to takeaway service not being through the servery. That servery is approved by way of a heritage exemption application, which was approved some time ago. So that opening out to Campbell Parade is approved. for that purpose. I believe that the DCP controls that reference this potentially don't take in the full picture of how cafes generally operate and whether or not that's a acceptable means of dealing with takeaway trade. As we all know, post-COVID, it's a little bit different these days. Having takeaway customers having to enter the premises is obviously quite inconvenient. It's incredibly difficult to police from an operational point of view, in that the operators would then have to ensure that everyone is checking in whilst waiting for their takeaway coffee for all of a minute that they might be there, but nonetheless, they should be checking in. So in this application, we are suggesting the deletion of DA condition 26. We don't see any need for that, given that the servery has been approved, along with the reasons that I have outlined in that memo that I sent through. Conditions 4 and 5 are in relation to essential services and fire safety upgrades. Again, that's covered by the building certificate that we have lodged and is all but approved. Rest assured, those measures have been implemented where appropriate, and oversight is in place by way of the building inspector from council, who was in the negotiating stage of the early parts of the project to ensure that we achieved a suitable level of compliance. One concern which was raised just now is that timber ceiling. That timber ceiling has been treated with a fire retardant. That has been detailed, documented. Specifications have been submitted as part of the building information certificate as well. We comply with BCA C110, which is, I believe, what is being referenced to in terms of combustibility of ceilings, etc. All of that has been documented as part of a separate application. This DA, I just want to remind the panel, is just for cooking in shop 2, extended hours and increased seating capacity, all of which have been assessed and conditioned. So in closing, and just to confirm, we're seeking the deletion of conditions 26, conditions 4 and condition 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one question from me. Any comment on condition 8 about the noise acoustic report?
A point taken in regards to, yes, generally that happens before a fit out occurs or the use is in place. However, the use has always been in place. I don't believe that we've intensified anything by doing the works that have been completed. There haven't been any significant noise complaints during the course of the current operation. I would love to request the deletion of that DA condition, but if we need to comply with it, I don't believe that we'll have any issues in doing so.
All right, and when you say there's no intensification, the report says you're increasing your numbers from 18 to 36. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I agree. On paper, we are increasing it. However, the previous operators were operating well and truly more than 18 seats. That's not anything that I think anyone can deny. There were a lot more seats within the premises, and they were quite busy. So I don't believe in the real world there's any intensification. However, from an approved use, yes, we are increasing capacity, but the level of insulation that is now on that ceiling versus what used to be there is substantially more. So those measures have already been in place. And again, there's been no complaints from anyone upstairs.
All right, any other questions from panel members? Yes, Joan?
Thank you. I just, I'm unclear at where the building certificate is at. And surely that's a prerequisite to the granting of consent, because we have to be satisfied that the premises are satisfactory or appropriate for the use, especially with retrospective approval. Correct. Or unauthorised uses.
And I believe this is potentially a question for council's departments. So we were working with Tony Quill, who's looking after that building certificate. He's an inspector at council. As I understand it, that application has effectively been drafted for approval, but given that there is a historic DA that prohibits cooking within shop, also it doesn't prohibit cooking in shop 2, it just doesn't allow for cooking in shop 2. He was awaiting consent of this DA to formalise that and strike that from the historic approvals, so that the fit out works, which include obviously a kitchen in shop 2, then marry up with a current approval. In terms of which one comes first, I can't comment.
Well, there are other issues apart from that one issue, and consent could not be granted until the panel was satisfied of all of those works.
It's unfortunate that I guess the details of the building information certificate have not been presented to the panel, but we have spent quite a bit of time on that in the background as part of that application. Effectively, all of the certificates of installation and compliance have been handed over to council in that respect.
I suppose, Chair, there may be the opportunity, we could consider this later about whether even a deferred commencement, identifying all those issues, but it seems to be rather complex in terms of what's required and what the consents are and what the building certificates are. And we need to be satisfied with that, that's all.
I guess if I can just jump in, one way to actually settle the matter is that as part of the building information certificate, we had to issue out a annual fire safety statement for the building as a whole. And that has been prepared and declared and submitted to council as per the requirements, and that's outside of the building certificate as well. So council has that on records, and that actually shows the level of fire safety upgrades that were required and implemented.
Well, I mean, there seems to be a number of difficulties, and one is also that whilst you say that the previous business may have been at the same intensity, the approval certainly would not indicate same, and we can't have regard to the unauthorised use as such. So I think you've got to be clear about what you're seeking approval for, and not trying to muddy the waters with, well, you know, it was already the same intensity.
I agree, and hence why I'm trying to just confirm the scope of this DA, and the scope of this DA does not include any of those fit-out works, as it can't. Those fit-out works have already been completed and are subject to a separate application.
Yeah, I mean, as I understand this issue is that the first step is there's a previous consent that restricts the use of the shop to have a kitchen. So that's a condition in a previous DA. So the building information certificate can't be issued until that's amended. So potentially that needed a modification application to amend that.
Which we tried to do when we were advised to withdraw that application and lodge a DA, unfortunately.
Okay, and then you need your building information certificate, which deals with all the issues to do with fire safety, et cetera, in terms of the works that are proposed. And then once that's approved, then this DA approves the use of those things that have been approved. This DA can modify the other consent to delete the condition in relation to the kitchen in shop 2, but it's how that works with the building information certificate not being able to be issued. But anyway, this is something that we'll have to put our minds to in terms of.
I believe, like I said, that building certificate is ready to be issued. So I'm not sure if there's an opportunity to have them concurrently approved at the same time or close to it. It may just be a misunderstanding from the other department in regards to the building certificate.
No, it can potentially be done as a deferred commencement. The issue is whether it can be issued where there's a condition in a previous consent that specifically says about that kitchen. Anyway, we'll have to think about it.
I have just as one question.
Yes.
My reading of the report indicates there's an application for footpath dining submitted to the council. How many places does that involve?
It's been deleted. But, sorry. So we've lodged a separate application. Is that what's being referred to?
Yes. Yes.
I'd have to bring that up. I don't have that in front of me. Just give me a second. I'll try and find that.
It's Bridget McNamara here. It's for 27 patrons.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Bridget.
All right.
There was a previous consent for footpath seating. I don't have that one in front of me either. So it's not 0 to 27.
It sounds like it would be a nice idea to understand what the total package at the end of the day is going to be, as opposed to bits and pieces.
I mean, also, if there's a noise statement, do you include a noise impact statement? Do you include the footpath dining, or is it just what's in the restaurant? I mean, I don't know. Some questions.
Yeah, it seems that in the first instance there should have been the DA for the modification, as the chair just said, for the kitchen to shop to, and everything else now seems to be. We've got to think about putting the cart before the horse here, and then you've got other plans for footpath and another DA. It's got to all come together in terms of a noise assessment, etc. So it's, to my mind, it seems to be quite unsatisfactory.
I believe if we look at the DA in isolation and ignore the footway or the footpath seating, the footpath seating can be assessed via a separate acoustic report to assess the additional seating out there. I think what we're doing, we're trying to keep this simple, and I know it seems complicated, but keep it simple in that if we just look at the DA and ignore the footpath seating, which is subject to a separate application, which will be assessed on its own merits. If we just look at the seating that is part of this DA, that's really what this DA includes, and that's where the scope of it ends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you very much. So that concludes that matter. The next item is item 7, which I'm just trying to find. So that's for 82 Liverpool Street, Dover Heights. We have no objectors registered to speak, and we have Michael Newstein and Adam Hampton on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, panel. I'm just here to answer any questions that might be brought about by this application. It is a recommendation for approval. I'm sure my client will be particularly pleased.
Any questions from the panel members?
Just one question, Michael. It's a big jump in the FSR. I mean, you've put the clause 4.6 in. It's been accepted by the council, but the variation is a big number.
It is indeed. There are about a dozen buildings of similar variety built in the last 5 years where the parking has been put underground, and the building has maintained really the front and rear setbacks that are previously there. And whilst the council and I disagree on the size of the number, they have been very helpful, and they've agreed that this is an appropriate form of development emerging in this area of Dover Heights.
So just on that, you're saying that because you haven't got a double garage at ground level, that goes underground. That's not included in GFA, but you then replace what you would have had occupied by a garage at ground level with GFA, and you get a similar bulk. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we get a similar bulk, and similar to those already approved, and which I think the councillors recognises are good developments individually, not just our one. I mean, we think that's good, but there are others similar that are the same good developments. And it may be that in the future that possibly those numbers need to be reviewed in terms of the LEP. But we're not suggesting, for instance, that councils abandon it or anything of the sort.
And you mentioned that it you mentioned that it maintained, existing setbacks at front and rear, but this building will be, the setback at the rear will be considerably less than it is now, and it will be more than the setback of, if you look at an aerial photo, it'll be more than the setback of a number of other buildings. So what's your commentary on that?
I don't understand the question quite. Sorry, Chairperson.
You mentioned in your answer to the first question by Mr. Brown was that you said that it essentially maintained, or this and other developments maintained, the setbacks at the front and the setbacks at the rear, i.e. the existing setbacks in the locality. Whereas my understanding, if looking at aerial photos, is that even the building on the corner next door, its setback will be a lot greater than this one. And the setback of the existing building on this side is clearly a lot
if you
greater
look at
than what's proposed.
If you look at the buildings to the east, they all show this emerging setback. I'm saying it doesn't maintain the old setback, it maintains the emerging new setback of these buildings. And the one on the corner is the oldest of that group of about 5 in the aerial photo on page 336.
Okay. All right, any other questions? No. All right. So does Mr. Hampton, he's just available for questions as well, is he?
He is, indeed.
Yeah, okay. So I don't think there's any further questions of either of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, panel.
The next item is item 8, 17 Fletcher Street, Tamarama. And we have no objectors, and then we have Anthony Petros from ABC Planning on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Petros there?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was unable to unmute. I am now.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, panel. Also, I'd like to thank council staff for the proactive way in this application has been assessed. We have made some quite significant amendments throughout the assessment process, and it's considered that the resultant form of development is suitable for the site. We would like the opportunity, please, to discuss conditions 2A, 2B and 2C, and they're on page 25 of your report. So the first one is the overall size of the roof terrace is to be reduced to a maximum area of 15 square metres. And the next condition 2B then requires 600mm wide planters to be on the eastern and western sides. I've worked out that given the length of the terrace times the 600mm, it results in a reduction of 6 square metres, which you end up with 16.95 square metres of available trafficable area. And in my opinion, the condition would suitably mitigate concerns about privacy, and therefore it could, in my opinion, delete condition 2A, given we're a mere 1.95 square metres of difference. Given the isolated nature of that terrace from surrounding properties, that it's not directly off the living area, I would consider that to be more or less meeting the intent of the condition in any event. It's also requested that the planting mechanism in condition 2B be adopted in condition 2C, rather than having screening to a height of 1.5 metres on both the east and western sides. It would effectively funnel a view from the internal living areas and from the balcony straight south to the flat building opposite the site. I understand that you would have gone to site today and seen the environment back there. And if I could just take the panel to page 3 of the agenda, please, which is the figure 3 has the photo of the Delvere Lane.
Yes.
And as you can see, there's quite a bit of a mutual overlooking in the area, And then if you scroll, or I'm going down to the next, or go over to the next page, page 4, you can see the 3D perspective of those areas. So in my opinion, having the planting buffering at the eastern and western edges would be sufficient in mitigating potential privacy concerns, given that there is really no privacy that exists in any of those terraces, as you can see from that context. Whilst on that 3D aerial, you'll also note the presence of upper level roof areas to a greater height and area than associated with the proposal. They were the only matters that I wish to discuss, unless you would like me to answer any questions.
Okay, so just on that 3D aerial, I'm just trying to understand, in your elevation, which is looking for the A3105, the drawing number, the building to the right at number 21 Fletcher Street, it shows that there's a sort of roof terrace in that building, but can you show me where that is on the aerial photo?
Right, and the problem with the 3D aerials, unfortunately, is they're not as up to date as the true aerials, and the photograph on the page above, page 3, shows the true time now. So unfortunately, the panoramic doesn't keep up with the area.
Yeah. Okay, but my understanding is that is within the main roof of the front of the building. What's shown in 21. It's not at the back. It doesn't come to the line at the back.
Sorry, the roof terrace is proposed at the rear?
No, if you look at number 21, what's in the roof there, the roof that's shown is the roof of the main part of the roof at the front of the building. It's not near the rear of the site, it's way back.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. And also the roof terraces on the other buildings further, so number 23 and 25, they're residential flat buildings, aren't they?
That's correct.
Okay, so just in terms of the need for this development, given that it would not comply with the height control, and given that you've got already proposing quite a number of terraces, quite substantial terraces, can you just explain, the logic behind it or the need for it?
Sure. Just starting from the ground floor, I'm just scrolling to my plans. So firstly, you've got the garage level, which is plan 2301. That then goes to the 2302, which is a living area with no terrace, and then you have the living area with its main terrace. You've got then the kitchen dining area with no terrace, and then you've got the roof terrace. So, and I'll just go to the section to confirm that as well, the long section, which is on plan. So section A, 3201. That's the long section.
Yes.
So you have a living area terrace there, as you can see, and then there's only the roof terrace. The roof terrace does afford excellent views that aren't available at that lower level.
So you're saying it gives better views than what you get at the...
Correct. And also it allows for opportunity for sunlight to a private open space area, which you wouldn't get at the lower level. So it does offer significant amenity, particularly on that basis. I think that you would actually, on the other, it's quite a cold side, that south-facing side, and the roof terrace allows for a high level of amenity.
All right. Any other questions from panel members? No. Okay. So that's that item. The next item is, thank you, Mr. Petros. The next item is item 996 to 104 Everleigh Street, Bondi Junction. We have no objectors, and we have Jeremy Blair. available for any questions from the panel. So I'm not sure if there are any questions from the panel.
Can I just say something? It was an absolute joy to look at a development that didn't have any clause 4.6s. And what came with it was a very smart design. It was nice reading the report, and the design is very nice also. So
thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think we all concur with that. Thank you very much, because it was a delight.
Fantastic.
Yes, very unusual. See if you can influence your colleagues.
Thanks very much.
All right, well, I don't think we've got any questions. So all we've got is compliments. Okay.
That doesn't happen very often, so take it away with you.
I will. I'll pass it on to the team and to the client. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the final item on the agenda is 12 Hall Street, Bondi Junction. And we have no registered objectors. And Josh Milston on behalf of the applicant.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So good afternoon, panel. Thanks for the opportunity to address you all today. My name is Josh Milston. I'm a traffic engineer, transport planner at JMT Consulting, and I've been assisting Woolworths with the application. I'm going to propose to use my allocated time today to describe how Woolworths, in response to a number of concerns raised by council in their report to the panel, have prepared a revised proposal which addresses each and every single one of these issues that council has. There was some supplementary information provided to the panel earlier this week. Hopefully you've received that. And
we have received it, but it's not our role to act as an assessment body. We're reliant on council to do that. And at this point, we haven't actually received any further assistance. Council was going to try and chase it up, so I don't know if that's happened as yet. So perhaps if you want to just do your explanation, and then at the end of it, I'll ask council if they've had a chance to actually do an assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll talk to the items in. I'll talk to the items in that report as well. Happy to take questions, obviously, at the end.
Yep.
So as I said, that supplementary assessment identifies a revised access strategy to address the concerns raised by council. Woolworths have worked really hard in the last couple of weeks to look at alternative options in response to some of the feedback we've received from council, particularly in relation to loss of car parking, pedestrian impacts, on-site waste collection as well. Really importantly, the proposal doesn't rely on any modification to loading zones on Hall Street, which does not therefore impact parking at any times of the day, and waste collection would also now fully take place on site rather than on street. That's a high level summary, and I'll talk to about 4 or 5 key points below as to how the revised strategy addresses council's concerns. Firstly, the development doesn't result in any loss of on-street car parking at any times of the day, nor at any times of the week, because the existing truck zone at the eastern end of Hall Street near Campbell Parade would be used. So this strategy therefore doesn't rely upon the extension of the loading zone near the site, which is one of council's key concerns, as it would have impacted on-street parking and impacted local businesses. So that that revised strategy fully addresses council's concerns on the matter. Secondly, all deliveries to the site would take place before 10 o'clock in the morning, between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. to be specific, when pedestrian volumes are significantly lower on Hall Street when compared to the remainder of the day. The previous proposal had 2 delivery windows, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. This has now been moved entirely to the morning. It also addresses council's concern they raised around noise impacts with trucks coming before 7 o'clock in the morning in the B4 zone. So trucks will no longer come before 7 o'clock. It will be between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. Thirdly, council raised concerns around the pedestrian assessment of pedestrian numbers that were collected. They were collected in the summer of February 2021 on a hot, busy day down at Bondi Beach. Nonetheless, we've done a sensitivity assessment which considers an increase of pedestrian volumes of 50% compared to what was observed, and that analysis demonstrates that the footpath still operates at a really good level of service, a level of service A. Fourthly, around bicycle parking, council raised concerns that there was no bicycle parking being provided. As part of the updated pack we've issued to the panel, we've indicated where those bicycle parking spaces would be provided right outside the store. And lastly, this is another key issue raised by council around waste collection. Woolworths have liaised with contractors who have confirmed they have the ability to collect waste entirely within the site and not rely upon Hall Street or Jakes Avenue for waste collection. And also, further to that, a preliminary waste management plan has been prepared, which was also requested by council. So they were the 5 or 6 key concerns raised by council as part of their report back to the panel. And in light of the revised strategy, we believe the proposal is now suitable and is consistent with the desired future character of the Campbell Parade Centre. And any further matters or further information can be addressed as part of the conditions of consent. I'd like to thank the panel for the opportunity to addressing you today, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Yes, Joan.
Could you just go, we haven't had the benefit of an assessment of that supplementary information, so there are a couple of options open to you, but can you just explain the on-site loading and unloading given the constraints as opposed to relying on the street as such? I don't quite understand that.
Sure. So obviously the base building, when it was designed, wasn't designed to accommodate any loading on site. There's no loading space within the site at all. So that would impact any retailer that went in there, whether it be a Woolworths or 3 individual retailers. They would not have the ability to load within the car park, given there's constrained height clearance. What we've discussed with the waste contractors is the ability for them to use the rear laneway from Jakes Avenue and park in that laneway within the site boundary, so not over the footpath, fully contained within the site boundary, and load directly from that laneway. So it would be managed in that waste would be brought out through the through the garage. The roller door would be up by the time that the waste vehicle enters the site. It would then be loaded directly from the laneway, and the vehicle would then drive out after it's been collected.
And similarly for deliveries?
For deliveries, the idea, as I mentioned earlier, would be to use the existing truck zone that's currently in place on Hall Street. So that's an existing zone that doesn't need to be modified at all, nor do the hours of operation need to be modified.
And how far away is that from the site?
It's about 70 to 80 metres from the site.
And it's just that I suppose I'm just attuned to seeing Woolworths trucks back into their loading docks, etc. And I'm just trying to understand how this could practically work.
It would be similar. There was a Woolworths recently, a Metro store recently opened in Bronte on McPherson Street, and a very similar arrangements occur there, where there is a zone, it's actually a loading zone in that circumstance, but operates in the same manner on McPherson Street itself. That operates between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. That was negotiated with council, those hours, but similarly a 3-hour window. And the delivery drivers unload directly onto the street, and then goods are transported through pallet jacks into the site.
By pallet?
By pallets.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And in the assessment report, there are images and discussion, further discussion around the use of pallets and how that is managed on site by Woolworths staff.
Mm-hmm. I suppose the next question is, when did you say you submitted the information to the council?
The supplementary report, I believe, was submitted directly through council to the panel earlier this week on Monday.
Monday? Okay, well,
yes.
It doesn't give any time for a proper assessment by the council.
Appreciate it.
As said, we're not in the business of actually doing the assessment. So I just don't know how you expect the panel to accommodate a late submission such as that.
Understood. We only received I guess in our defence, we only received the council report on Wednesday last week. So that didn't give us much time to review some of these access arrangements. It took a bit of time to understand what could be done to alleviate some of council's concerns. So we would have loved to have given you more time, but we only received the report Wednesday last week.
So potentially, are you seeking a deferral of this application? Because we, even if we were of a mind to approve it, we haven't got conditions, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Well, we know we haven't received conditions from council either. Yeah.
So essentially, you're seeking a deferral.
Yes, it could be deferred.
Okay, and just another question. You said that you're saying your deliveries would be between 7 and 10 a.m., whereas the other one in Bronte is, I think you said between 10 and 12.
9 a.m. and 12 p.m.
Well, why the difference?
The difference in Bronte, I believe the existing zone from 9 to 12 operated as a loading zone previously, and that best suited council, whereas 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., we've chosen that because pedestrian numbers involved. Council's raised concerns around pedestrian numbers on Hall Street, and effectively the pedestrian flows are lowest or significantly lower between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. compared to later on in the day. Later on in the day, the higher the numbers are.
Oh, okay. So they're less at that time.
Oh, yeah, they're much less. Yes.
Okay. Good.
We did surveys on a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday. So a Friday in February, a Saturday in February, and a Sunday in February. The busiest times are that lunchtime peak around Bondi Beach, and people going to the beach in the afternoon. We would be open to a window of 9 a.m. till 12 p.m., but we thought that 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. window would best suit council.
Okay, and the other one in Bronte, it's only opened recently? Is that
a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
So it's too early to tell if there's any issues with it or how it's operating, or you haven't had any posts?
I haven't had any feedback, no.
Okay.
Okay, but some post-operation would have been, I suppose, important. Did you say these pallets are to be wheeled some 70 metres?
It's about, I need to check the exact distance. It's about 70 metres or so.
And can I just ask, for McPherson Street, even though we haven't got any data on its operation, but what's the distance there?
It's less there. It's about 30 metres or 20 to 30 metres or so.
Okay, thank you.
I guess in that we initially proposed the loading zone further along Hall Street because that distance would be much reduced. That was only about 10, 15 metres from the site entry. Council did not support the extension of the loading zone on Hall Street, hence why we reverted back to the truck. So,
and was the option of swapping the truck zone for the loading zone in sense making the loading zone longer and getting rid of your on-street car parking space, but compensating for that by making the truck zone less? Was that looked at, or what are the constraints?
We raised that. I raised that personally with council's traffic engineer, and he didn't support that. It was our preference to utilise the loading zone, and offset that or mitigate that by not using the truck zone. But
and you don't know, you're not aware of specific needs for the truck zone to be exactly in that location, or?
I believe the hotel revisies use it for their loading.
Okay.
For unloading of their kegs.
Well, you can't stop the kegs being unloaded.
No, I can't stop the kegs. Look, I'm just looking. I'm just measuring. I didn't previously measure the exact distance, and I was just thinking off the top of my head. But looking at it now on the satellite, it looks to be about 35 to 40 meters distance away, rather than the 60 or 70 that I mentioned. So
is the exact?
I was underselling it from my end, so apologies.
Is it in the report? The additional information is the exact.
That distance is not. No, that's why I didn't have it off the top of my head. But I was doing a few things at once there, and just looking at it.
Can I just ask one further question, and that's in respect of how long would you expect this truck to have to be there with the pallets being transported back and forth?
The truck sits there for about half an hour or so, but the pallets are transported one at a time.
I understand that.
So yeah.
How many people are going to be on this truck then?
There's one driver who unloads it to a Woolworth, who unloads it onto the street where a Woolworth staff member drives the pallet or moves the pallet jack into the store, and that Woolworths staff member who's driving it is monitored or managed through a spotter who's looking after identifying any issues regarding pedestrians or anything else that that driver should be aware of.
And can I ask, I mean, because I haven't read all this information that you've sent in, but can I ask, is there a plan of management? Because it seems to be a lot more complex than your normal operation.
There is a plan of management, yes. If I have the ability to share a screen, I'm happy to share with you or show you visually what the palette looks like. Not sure we can or not.
The council doesn't seem to enable
that's okay.
share screening for this.
That's okay. There's a photo in the report that you can see.
All right, so just one other question from me. In terms of what you're describing, the more you describe it, the more sort of complicated it sounds in terms of, needing further assessment. So what's the, rather than it just, we refusing it and then you coming back with an 8.2 review that then enables all this to be assessed, et cetera, why is your preference for deferral as opposed to that other option?
Oh, I think in terms of time and process and cleaner.
Okay. All right, other questions from the panel? Anything else from anyone?
I have some questions around the waste management. How frequently will that occur? Is that a daily thing? Or?
It's about once a day, yeah.
And does that involve a truck backing into that laneway?
Because the basement was never designed to accommodate any trucks of any form, the truck would have to back into the laneway and then drive forwards out.
And what time of the day is that going to occur?
That hasn't yet been defined. Most likely, it would be dependent on the contractors and something that could be agreed with council. But most likely morning's typical when other waste is collected.
Okay.
But it would be dependent on contractors.
Okay, thank you.
And just on that, the noise impacts of that occurring, has that been considered?
Or the noise impacts, no, not specifically is the answer, but it wouldn't, similar to the deliveries in the B4 zone, it would be stipulated that no deliveries would occur, or no waste collection, I should say, would occur before 7 a.m. in the morning. So it would be similar to the delivery, to the controls around the deliveries for the store.
All right, no other questions?
I just note that there's also a concern in the assessment report about the proposal promoting good design and amenity for the built environment. And as we know, the stores there are generally smaller frontages with a finer fabric than just a large single tenancy. That's a matter that we've got to consider. I just thought I'd raise it. I don't expect you to answer it. Your expertise clearly.
No, it's a little bit outside my lane, but no, if there's anything if there's any further information you require, please let me know.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you very much. So that was the last item on the agenda. And as I said in my opening, the panel, this meeting will now be closed and the panel will deliberate on the matters, and our decisions and our reasons for decisions will be placed on council's website as soon as possible. So the meeting is concluded at 1:45 p.m.
And we're back on at what time, please, Chair?
Is that half an hour enough for you?
Yes, thank you.
So 1:15.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.